Well, I was Sharon, I got her wires crossed a little bit, so I am not completely prepared. But I wanted to share a little bit about Peter, since we're here at Simon Peter's house. And Peter is someone I've always identified with, obviously. He is very zealous, but not always well thought. And that's certainly been the pattern of my Christian life. I was very zealous for God early on in my walk, but I wasn't very well thought. And about 7.5 years ago, I really surrendered my life to Christ, and things have changed a lot since then. But Peter, when we go down to the beach, we're going to kind of have that moment where we remember his scene. And I don't think there is anyone else for whom forgiveness was sweeter than for Peter. And the book attributed to him in 1 Peter, if you remember, he writes, "Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins." And I think that Peter wrote that because no one knew that better than him, what it meant to stand before Christ and to know what he had done and to have Christ give him that sweet forgiveness. And in his book, 1 Peter, he writes to Gentile Christians in Asia Minor. If you're familiar with the book, he is encouraging them because they are facing suffering. Gentile Christians in the area of Asia Minor, he calls them elect exiles. Now, the Jewish people had always been known as elect exiles, but not the Gentiles. And what Bob talked about this morning about being grafted in, they were grafted in. But for them, this is a whole new subtext, the fact that they are elect exiles. And for them, what happened was because their culture is a very honor and shame culture, and they were very much involved in, for them, like the feasts and all the pagan feasts that went on, that was part of their culture. They were expected to be part of that. That's how you raise yourself to a level of honor in your culture. So they had to be involved in this. So when they became Christ followers, they no longer could participate in those sort of things. So socially for them, in the social culture, like we have lots of different stratospheres of social culture nowadays, but it wasn't like that back then. Like there was a very inside and outside. And for them to say, we are not going to participate in these feasts, we're not going to participate in this, that meant for them not only nobody liked them like it does for us, it meant lack of economic prosperity, it meant being rejected by their own families. They were facing severe, for them the choice to follow Christ was a big deal. It meant a lot for them abandoning a lot of things. So this book in 1 Peter, when you read this, remember that he is encouraging them to not abandon their faith in light of the persecution that they're going to suffer. And it is social persecution mostly because real, like the martyrdom that we think of doesn't happen until the 2nd and 3rd century so much. But this is the beginning. And what he wants to do is he wants to encourage these people because these are the people who are going to birth those people who come in the 2nd and 3rd century. It's their faith that is grounding, that's teaching these next people who are going to eventually be martyred for their faith. And so in 1 Peter 4, he says, verse 16, he says, "Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in that name." And I don't know if you know this, but the name Christian was given. It wasn't a title that was adopted by the Christians. It was given to them as a mockery. It was for them to be mocked. Oh, you're a Christos follower.
One of those, yeah.
So it wasn't something that they brought on themselves. So, and he says, don't reject that. Embrace that. Embrace that because Christ has suffered. So you also ought to suffer. So he's telling them, he's subverting everything that they know about honor and shame and that they know from their culture. He's saying, don't let them shame you. And I love this because I think that it speaks so much to us because as American Christians, like we need to be aware of our brotherhood and other countries who are truly suffering for the cause of Christ. People give their lives every day to be able to share the gospel of Christ. And if you're looking for information on that, Voice of the Martyrs is an excellent website, and they talk about that. And that is something that God's been convicting my heart about recently. It's just like, I really need to be, aware of that, to be praying for them, because these people give their lives for that. And he says, and after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, resist the devil, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. So I think that's a good, good thing, because the social persecution we go through here is a little bit different. But I think that it's good to remember that we too have the name of Christ, and how we act and what we do is a reflection of the forgiveness, the sweet forgiveness that we have been given. And he says in chapter 4, since therefore Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves with the same way of thinking. For whoever has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, so as to live for the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for human passions, but for the will of God. And that was Christ's example. He lived for the will of the Father, no matter what it cost him. When he left his family to go on his ministry, that was considered very wrong. His family was very upset. He was the eldest son. He was expected to stay at home and take care of them, and he didn't. He said, I have to do my Father's will. So I just want to give us that encouragement today that we carry the name of Christ, and it should be a proud one. We have been forgiven, and we have eternal hope. And like Peter said, let's carry that strongly and proudly.